A cowboy hid a secret in his barn, a secret so dangerous it could destroy everything he loved. Under the blazing Arizona sun, a desperate widow knocked on Jace Callahan's door, seeking only work to feed her child. Yet she stumbled into whispers of a locked barn, a wounded Mustang, and a past wrapped in fire and betrayal. Flames roared as enemies set the night ablaze, a little boy trapped inside, and a broken horse leapt through the fire to carry him out. In the ashes, Jace faced a gun aimed at his heart, until loyalty, sacrifice, and love turned the tide. And from that night of terror rose a bond stronger than land, stronger than fear, a family born not of bargain, but of love. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you wish to walk beside more tales of courage and love, please subscribe. Your presence here means the world. The Arizona sun hung heavy and merciless, beating down on the desert like a hammer on an anvil. Heat shimmered above the dirt road, where a woman in black walked with determined steps. Clara Monroe, 27, wore grief in her clothing and resolve in her stride. Her dress, once fine, was now faded and frayed from travel. A bun at the nape of her neck had loosened, chestnut strands whipping against her face with every gust of hot wind. Her hazel eyes, ringed with exhaustion, carried something stronger than weariness, the stubborn will of a woman who had nothing left but the child at her side. That child, Tommy Monroe, no more than 5, clung to her hand. His sandy blonde hair stuck to his forehead, his shirt patched and worn thin, his cheeks streaked with road dust. Yet his green eyes, though dulled by fatigue, still flicked with curiosity toward the endless horizon. He did not whine, did not beg to stop. His silence was the silence of trust. They stopped before the gates of Broken Spur Ranch. The ranch stretched broad across the valley, fences threading into distance, barns squatting low against the wind, and at its heart, a 2-story house with a wide porch. Its boards were weathered but strong, its rocking chairs still. To Clara, it looked less like salvation and more like judgment waiting to be passed. She tightened her grip on Tommy's hand. "This is our last chance," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The porch creaked. A man stepped into view. Jace Callahan, 35, carried the shape of a man built by frontier land. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a plain shirt rolled at the sleeves. His frame spoke of long hours against cattle and soil. His black hair bore streaks of early silver, curls brushing beneath the rim of a sun-bleached Stetson. His stubble jaw was set firm, his mouth tight. But it was his eyes, icy blue, cool and measuring, that cut through Clara, weighing her presence before she could speak. "This is private land," he said, his voice low and even. Clara straightened. "I've come to ask for work." "Any work you'll give me?" Jace descended the steps, boots grinding the dirt. He scanned her, dusty dress, travel-bitten face, child clinging to her hand, and his silence stretched too long. "We don't hire women at Broken Spur," he said finally. Her heart sank, but desperation forced her forward. "I can cook, mend, keep books, clean. I learn fast. Just a chance, that's all." His gaze held hers, unreadable. Then, "There's one position open." Her chest lifted. "I'll take it." "Not so fast." His tone was clipped, his eyes sliding briefly to the horizon. "It comes with a condition." Clara's body went cold. She had heard whispers about men like him, ranchers who took wives not out of love, but for land, for heirs, for security. Her jaw tightened. "You mean marriage," she said, bitterness hardening her words. "A wife to secure your claim. A body to prove your land. Is that what you want?" A flicker, surprise, maybe amusement, crossed Jace's face, gone as quickly as it came. "No," he said evenly. "Not marriage." His gaze sharpened. "If you stay here, you keep a secret. One no one else can know. Break it, and you and your boy will be gone by sunrise." Clara blinked, startled. "A secret?" "You'll know soon enough." He tipped his chin toward the far edge of the ranch. There, apart from the rest, stood a barn with heavy iron hinges on its doors. It seemed to crouch in shadow, though the sun was blazing everywhere else. For a moment, Clara thought she heard something faint, a rattle, a low cry swallowed by distance. Tommy tugged her sleeve. His voice was a whisper. "Mama, what's in there?" The sound came again, clearer this time, a strained, wounded groan, the kind that clutched the gut and made the heart ache. Clara stiffened. Jace's expression darkened. He crouched to Tommy's level, his voice firm, his gaze unyielding. "You keep away from that barn, son." "Both of you?" Clara swallowed. "If it's nothing, why lock it? Why the secrecy?" He rose, his hand brushing the revolver at his hip, not in threat, but as a boundary. "Because some truths burn hotter than fire. Stay away, and you'll have your wages, your roof, your work. Step too close, and you'll lose it all." The sun dipped lower, painting the land in the scarlet. Clara felt Tommy's grip tighten in hers. She forced a nod, though unease twisted inside her. "Then, we'll keep your secret." But Jace stepped closer, his voice dropping to a warning that seemed to rumble through the earth itself. "Understand me, Mrs. Monroe. If you ever set foot in that barn—" His eyes cut into hers, sharp as drawn steel. "You and your boy will lose everything." A metallic clang echoed from the barn at that exact moment, like chains snapping taut. Tommy flinched, pressing against his mother's side. Clara's breath caught, and for the first time she wondered if, in seeking refuge here, she had led her son into something darker than desperation. Jace's warning, paired with the eerie cry from the barn, leaves Clara frozen in fear and doubt. The promise of shelter now feels like a bargain with shadows. The desert night was cruelly quiet. The cicadas had hushed, and the only sound across Broken Spur Ranch was the faint creak of boards cooling under starlight. Clara Monroe lay in a narrow bed in the room Jace had shown her and Tommy. Though exhaustion pulled at her bones, her mind churned. Jace Callahan's warning still rang in her ears. "If you ever set foot in that barn, you and your boy will lose everything." Tommy had curled up beside her, small chest rising and falling steadily. Clara brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, silently vowing to shield him. Yet the faint metallic rattle drifting from the forbidden barn gnawed at her thoughts, turning sleep into a stranger. Sometime before dawn, she stirred and found the bed empty. Her breath caught. "Tommy?" she whispered into the dimness. No answer. Panic flared hot and instant. She pushed to her feet, heart slamming, and pulled open the door. The hallway was silent, save for the draft whispering through the boards. Downstairs, the parlor lay dark. Beyond the windows, the yard shimmered under a pale moon. Then she saw him. A small figure stood at the edge of the yard, no more than a shadow in nightshirt and bare feet. Tommy, transfixed, facing the barn. "Tommy!" she hissed, hurrying across the floor and out into the cool night air. Her breath fogged as she reached him, dropping to her knees and clutching his shoulders. "What are you doing out here?" His eyes were wide, glassy, reflecting the barn's silhouette. "Mama, someone's crying." The words iced Clara's spine. She pulled him close, shielding him against her. But then she heard it too. Faint, muffled, a low moan that quivered through the air. Not wind, not cattle. A sound of pain. Before she could retreat, boots struck the dirt behind her. "Get away from there!" Jace Callahan emerged from the shadows, lantern in one hand, revolver at his hip. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves hastily rolled, the light carved harsh planes across his face, blue eyes flashing like steel in firelight. Clara stiffened, Tommy clinging to her skirts. He heard crying. I heard it too. There's something, someone in there. Jace's gaze locked on the barn. His jaw tightened, then he turned it back on her. "I told you to stay clear." "I will not stand by while a person suffers locked inside," she shot back, voice trembling but firm. Jace's mouth opened, then shut. For a moment his expression cracked, not anger, but a flicker of burden too heavy to name. He exhaled sharply, pinched the bridge of his nose. "You want answers?" he muttered. "Fine, but not out here." He nodded toward the house. "Both of you inside." Now Clara hesitated. The sound rattled again from within the barn, chains clinking against wood. Tommy buried his face against her, whispering, "It's scared, Mama." "Inside," Jace repeated, his tone brooking no refusal. They returned to the kitchen, lantern light casting long shadows across the wooden table. Jace set the lamp down, rubbed a hand across his jaw, and finally spoke. "You shouldn't have heard that." Clara folded her arms. "But we did. You can't expect silence to bury it." Jace's eyes bored into hers. "That barn holds something dangerous, something I swore to protect." Her stomach twisted. Protect or imprison? Before he could answer, the back door creaked open. A woman shuffled in, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. Martha Kincaid, late 60s, looked like the desert itself had weathered her. Her frame was sturdy despite age, her hair a gray-white braid coiled at her neck, her face furrowed deep with years of work. Yet her blue eyes were sharp, quick, missing nothing. "What's all this noise at God's hour?" she asked, voice raspy but firm. "Nothing that concerns you," Jace said too quickly. Martha's eyes slid from him to Clara, then to the boy clutching her skirts. She clicked her tongue. "Nothing, is it? Funny, I've heard that nothing every night these past weeks." Clara's heart leapt. "You've heard it too?" Martha gave a slow nod, lips pressing thin. "Ain't my place to speak, but secrets don't stay buried on this land. Best you know that Jace's fists tightened at his sides." "Enough, Martha." The older woman raised her brows, unbothered. "Fine. But if you won't tell her, she'll find out herself. And don't say I didn't warn you." With that, she shuffled back out, the door closing with a sigh. Silence pressed heavy. Clara's chest heaved with anger and fear. "What is in that barn, Jace?" He looked at her, blue eyes storm-tossed. "Something I owe my life to. Something the law would destroy if they knew. That's all I'll say." "That's not enough," Clara whispered. He stepped closer, his presence like a wall. "It has to be." His gaze dropped to Tommy, who clutched his mother's hand with wide, frightened eyes. Jace's jaw clenched. "For his sake." "Yours." "And mine." The days that followed stretched taut as wire. Clara worked alongside Martha in the kitchen, Tommy never straying far from her skirts. Ranch hands eyed her with curiosity, but offered no words. And always, the barn loomed. In daylight it sat silent, innocuous. But at night the noises returned, low groans, rattles of chains, sometimes a thud that made the walls shiver. Each sound pulled Clara's gaze to her son, who whispered again and again, "It's hurting, Mama." By the third night, she could bear it no longer. The moon was high, bathing the yard in silver. Clara wrapped Tommy in a blanket on the bed and slipped quietly downstairs. Her bare feet carried her across the cool floor, through the back door, and out into the night. The barn rose against the stars, its iron-bound doors glinting. Each step closer, the air grew heavier, until she stood before it, palm pressed to. The wood, the sound came, a muffled whinny, broken and strained, followed by the scrape of hooves against the boards. Clara's breath caught, not a person, a horse. A voice cut through the night. "You should have listened." She spun. Jace stood a few paces away, lantern in one hand, revolver gleaming at his hip, fury etched into every line of his face. The groan sounded again from within, louder this time, undeniable. Clara's voice trembled. "There's a horse in there. Why would you chain a creature like that?" Jace stepped forward, his shadow swallowing hers. "Because it's no ordinary horse. And if you open that door, you'll damn us all." Jace's words hung in the air, as the barn shuddered with a violent thud from inside, chains rattling like thunder. The secret of Broken Spur strained against its prison, and Clara realized her life here balanced on a door she was forbidden to open. The desert was quiet after the gunless night, but inside Clara Monroe's chest, a storm brewed. She stood at the threshold of the barn, the air thick with dust and the metallic scent of old iron. Jace Callahan had cornered her with his words, warning her again and again to stay clear. Yet the sounds from within, chains rattling, low guttural cries, haunted her like a specter. "Mama," Tommy whispered, his small fingers laced tightly through hers. His brown eyes were wide, reflecting the lantern glow. "It's not bad." "I know it's not." Clara knelt to hush him, though her heart pounded with the same defiance. She rose, facing Jace across the shadows. His shoulders filled the doorway, and his revolver caught the pale moonlight. The blue in his eyes was no longer just storm. It was a barricade. "You want the truth?" His voice was ragged, worn down by years of secrets. "Fine, but you'll carry it with you to your grave." He unlatched the iron bar across the barn doors. Hinges groaned, and the smell of sweat, hay, and blood spilled out into the night. Inside, under the faint light of his lantern, stood a Mustang stallion. Its name, Jace confessed in a voice low and reverent, was Shadow. The animal's coat was coal black, streaked with scars. Its mane fell in tangled ropes, and its eyes, one brown, one clouded milky from an old wound, blazed with both fury and fear. Iron chains looped around thick posts held it in place. Yet, even restrained, the horse radiated raw power. Tommy gasped. "He's beautiful!" Shadow threw its head back, chains clattering, teeth bared in defiance. Yet, when Tommy stepped forward, the horse stilled. The great stallion lowered its head a fraction, nostrils flaring as though tasting the boy's courage. Clara's breath caught. He calmed. Jace stared in disbelief. His hand twitched near the revolver, but he did not lift it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice tightening. "That horse doesn't calm for anyone. Not for me. Not for the hands. He's killed men who tried." Clara turned, confusion sharpening into accusation. "Then why keep him alive? Why hide him in chains?" Jace's jaw locked. For a long moment, silence filled the barn. Only Shadow's labored breathing broke it. Finally, he spoke. "Because I owe him my life. And because killing him would mean killing the last good thing I have." The truth came out in fragments, torn from him like cloth ripped from an old wound. Years ago, during the war, Jace had been pinned under rubble when a canyon wall collapsed in cannon fire. His legs shattered, his company scattered. He should have died in the dust. But from the smoke and terror came Shadow, a half-wild Mustang that had bolted from the battlefield. Jace had no idea why the horse lingered, but it dragged him free, carried him across miles of enemy fire, and dropped him near Allied lines before vanishing into the wild. "I searched years for him," Jace admitted, voice heavy with memory. "Found him broken, scarred, haunted, same as me. Thought I could heal him. Thought maybe, if I fixed him, I'd fix myself." Clara touched the wooden rail, her palm trembling. "And instead, you chained him." Shadow stamped, eyes flashing. But Tommy, undeterred, reached a hand through the gap in the fence. The horse's massive head leaned down, nostrils brushing the boy's small fingers. Clara lunged forward in fear, yet Shadow did not bite. He exhaled, a deep rumble, and for the first time, his body stilled. Jace's mouth parted. Awe flickered in his eyes, quickly masked by disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "That horse hates strangers." "Not all strangers," Clara said, her voice soft but cutting. As if summoned by the tension, Martha entered quietly, her lantern throwing weak light across her lined face. "There are whispers in town," she said, eyes narrowing on Jace, "about how you killed a man, burned a cabin. Folks say you carry more blood on your hands than the war gave you." Clara turned sharply to Jace. "Is it true?" His silence spoke volumes. His gaze went to Shadow, then back to Clara, filled with something raw, pain, guilt, defiance. "The rumors aren't born of nothing," Martha pressed. "People remember fire in the North Pasture. They remember bodies. They remember your rage." Jace's knuckles whitened around the lantern handle. His voice, when it came, was flat as desert stone. "I fought men who tried to steal this land. Men who came for Shadow. They came armed. Some never left. You call it murder. I call it war carried home." Clara flinched, though Tommy still stroked Shadow's muzzle with fearless wonder. The barn seemed to breathe with the weight of the confession. Clara's throat burned with questions, with fury, with something close to pity. She could no longer stay silent. "You changed Shadow," she said, her voice trembling but fierce. "You've changed yourself. And you expect me to pretend it's not happening?" Jace's eyes hardened. "If you tell the town, they'll kill him. And they'll come for me next." Clara's spine stiffened. The air between them crackled like tinder near flame. "Then swear to me," she demanded. "Swear on everything you are, Jace Callahan. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever hide another truth, I will tell the whole town myself." The words hung sharp in the air. Even shadows shifted, as though the horse too felt the weight of her vow. Jace stood rooted, chest heaving, caught between rage and surrender. His silence was its own confession. Clara's voice cut the darkness, final and unyielding. "If you deceive me again, Jace, I swear I'll tell the town everything." The lantern light flickered, Shadow's shadow looming larger across the barn wall, as though echoing the threat. The Arizona sun burned across the valley, relentless and merciless, the heat pressing down like judgment. Clara Monroe stood by the porch, eyes following Jace as he worked the fence line. His body moved with the rhythm of someone who carried too many burdens, yet refused to let them fall. The silence between them was heavy, both still haunted by the barn and by Shadow's chained presence. Clara wanted to believe the vow she had forced from Jace, but doubt clung like dust to her skin. Hoofbeats broke the stillness. Dust swirled on the horizon, and Jace froze, hammer still in hand. The figure that approached carried himself with an air of ownership, not hesitation. When he dismounted, the sharp lines of his black coat, polished boots, and slicked-back silver-streaked hair marked him as someone who did not belong to the dust and sweat of a working ranch. Harlan Bates. At 42, Bates's frame was lean, his posture predatory, every gesture deliberate. Gray eyes scanned the land like a surveyor claiming what was already his. He removed his gloves slowly, savoring the silence. "Callahan," he said, voice dripping with false courtesy. "You're not easy to pin down." Jace wiped his brow, jaw hardening. "Not hard enough, apparently." Clara pulled Tommy closer to her side as the boy peeked from behind her skirts. Bates's gaze flickered over them both, a smile curving his lips. "So, this is the widow. You do have a way of filling your house quickly, Jace. Some things never change." He strolled across the yard, his hands trailing the fence rails, his voice deceptively casual. "Funny thing, standing here again. Reminds me of your father's old place, the one that went up in flames." He turned, eyes gleaming with malice. "Some said it was an accident, but others whispered it was you, Callahan. The angry son with a taste for fire. Which was it?" Clara's eyes snapped to Jace. His face gave nothing away, though the muscles in his jaw tightened. Bates circled closer, like a wolf savoring the scent of fear. "Of course," he went on. "Rumors are hard to kill, aren't they? They cling like smoke." Jace's fists clenched at his sides. "You know what happened." "Do I?" Bates tilted his head, smiling as if enjoying a private joke. "Or is that the story you tell yourself at night to quiet the screams?" The words cut like a blade. Clara felt her stomach twist. Was this the truth behind Jace's silence? The fire, the death, the endless rumors? Bates leaned closer, voice dropping to a low threat. "This ranch is dying. Debts, whispers, a chained monster in your barn. Sell it to me. I'll let you keep a corner for yourself. Refuse and—" His gaze shifted toward the barn. "I'll take more than your land." The message was clear. Shadow. Jace's voice was steady, but steel edged every word. "You'll never have him. Or this land." "Not while I draw breath," Bates smiled, tipping his hat in, but mock respect. "Over your dead body, then. A bargain I can live with." He swung into his saddle and rode off, the dust swallowing him. But his presence lingered like the promise of fire. Later, Clara found Mike by the trough, coiling rope with deliberate slowness. Broad-shouldered, his salt-and-pepper beard framed a face carved by sun and hard work. His eyes, dark and heavy with years of knowledge, seemed to measure every word before it left his mouth. "Mrs. Monroe," he greeted with a nod, voice rough from years of shouting over cattle and storms. She hesitated, then asked, "What do you make of Bates?" Mike spat into the dirt. "Think he's poison. Always has been." He pulled the rope tighter, his hands steady, but his eyes shadowed. "But don't fool yourself into thinking Jace is spotless either." Clara froze. "What do you mean?" Mike's gaze lingered on the barn, then back to her, hard and warning. "I've ridden with him near 15 years. He's a good man, but not a clean one. Secrets cling to him like burrs. He carries them close. Don't trust him completely, not unless you're ready to carry the weight he won't." The words landed like stones in Clara's chest. She wanted to shout that Mike was wrong, that Jace had sworn to her, that he was more than his silence. But the doubts Bates had seeded were already sprouting. Night fell heavy. Clara sat by Tommy's bed until his breathing deepened, then slipped outside for air. The desert was alive with sound. Crickets, the sigh of wind through grass, the distant call of a coyote. She hoped the night would clear her thoughts. Then she saw it. A flicker of light near the barn. Her steps quickened, every instinct screaming. She pressed against the shadows of the corral and peered around the corner. The scent hit her first, sharp, acrid, unmistakable. Kerosene. And then she saw him. Bates. He moved with the silence of a predator, lantern in one hand, can in the other. He splashed liquid across the wooden beams of the barn, the kerosene glistening in the moonlight. The chain inside rattled violently, Shadow shrieking in terror, sensing death in the air. Clara's throat constricted. She pressed her hand to her mouth to hold back a cry. Bates crouched, striking a match. The sulfur flared, its glow painting his face with hellfire. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The barn, the horse, the truth Jace had hidden, about to be swallowed in the flames. The match trembled between Bates's fingers, poised above the dark trail of kerosene. Shadow's scream tore through the night, wild and desperate. Clara's body shook, caught between terror and rage. She wanted to run, to shout, to stop him, yet her legs refused to move. The flame hovered, death waiting to fall. Clara's eyes locked on the fire, her scream trapped in her chest, as Bates lowered the match toward the kerosene-soaked earth. Shadow thrashed inside, chains clanging in a symphony of terror. The night was about to ignite. The fire swallowed the barn in seconds. Flames climbed the timbers with a hiss like serpents striking, sparks shooting into the black sky. The air turned thick, suffocating, each breath hot as cinders. Clara covered her mouth, eyes stinging, as Shadow screamed inside, hooves clanging against chains. Jace lunged forward, his face pale in the light of the blaze. "We have to get them out!" Clara followed, the roar of fire deafening. Smoke rolled around them, choking, pressing close like a living thing. Inside the barn, the world was chaos, timbers cracking, straw igniting underfoot, Shadow thrashing in blind terror. Then Clara's heart stopped. In the far corner, barely visible through smoke, was a small shape curled tight. Tommy. Tommy! She sprinted, skirts dragging through ash, coughing as heat pressed into her lungs. The boy's face was streaked with soot, his cough shallow, but he lifted his arms weakly when he saw her. "Mama." Clara scooped him up, holding him against her chest. The terror in his small body shook her to her core. Jace, at the other end of the barn, swung a crowbar against Shadow's chains, sparks flying. The iron groaned but held. Shadow reared, his massive body slamming against wood and steel, sweat and soot streaking his coat. "Easy!" Jace shouted, his voice raw. "I'm not your enemy. Fight with me." The barn door slammed open. Through the smoke stepped Mike Turner. At 45, Mike's shoulders were still broad from years on the range, his beard streaked gray, his dark eyes sharp beneath a battered hat. For 15 years, he'd been Jace's right hand, steady as an oak, his loyalty as sure as the rising sun. But tonight his face was unreadable, his posture deliberate. In his hands, gleaming in the firelight, rested a shotgun. "Mike!" Jace shouted, sweat dripping down his temple. "Help me with the chains!" But Mike didn't move. His gaze slid past Jace, past Clara clutching Tommy, and lingered on Shadow. "You're wasting your breath." "This place is already finished." The words struck colder than the fire was hot. Jace's jaw tightened. "What are you saying?" Mike's eyes hardened, his voice low, almost regretful. "Bates offered me a choice. A piece of land. A future. You're chasing ghosts. Same as your father." Clara's voice cracked. "You betrayed us?" Mike's expression faltered for half a breath, then set like stone. "Better a traitor than a fool who dies for nothing." The betrayal cut deeper than the smoke. Jace straightened, crowbar clenched. "Get out of my way!" Mike lifted the shotgun. Not tonight. The fire roared, and in that instant Shadow hurled his body forward. The chain snapped with a scream of metal. The Mustang stumbled free, sides heaving, eyes blazing with fury. Clara shielded Tommy as Shadow crashed past, shaking sparks from his mane. Jace seized the moment. "Clara, now!" She understood. With trembling hands, she lifted Tommy onto Shadow's back. The boy clung instinctively to the thick mane. Shadow, limping but unbroken, lowered his head and lunged through the flames. Clara ran alongside, coughing, her eyes streaming. Together, they burst from the inferno into the cool night air. Behind them, the barn sagged, fire devouring its bones. Bates stepped from the shadows outside, his fine coat glinting with embers. His face, thin and angular, twisted into a smile that was colder than the flames. "Good work, Turner." Clara spun, horror washing over her. Mike, standing beside Bates now, shotgun lowered. The truth cut sharper than smoke. Jace stumbled out of the barn, blood on his knuckles, ash streaking his face. His eyes darted from Clara, safe with Tommy and Shadow, to Mike at Bates's side. "You?" Jace's voice was raw, almost disbelieving. "After everything?" Mike looked away. "I did what I had to." The world shrank to the four of them in the fire's glow. Jace standing alone, Bates with his revolver gleaming, Mike silent in betrayal, Clara clutching Tommy as Shadow swayed beside her, sides scorched, legs trembling. The barn gave a final groan and collapsed inward, sparks shooting into the sky. Bates stepped forward, revolver leveled at Jace. His gray eyes burned with triumph. "This ends now." Jace raised his own weapon, chest heaving, but his arm shook from exhaustion. Clara could only clutch Tommy tighter, her heart pounding. Shadow stamped once, his body quivering with pain, but his head lifted high, refusing to bow. Bates's voice cut through the night, low and venomous. "Tonight, I finished the Callahan name." The hammer clicked back. The fire roared higher, painting the land in orange fury. Clara's scream tore the night as Bates's finger closed on the trigger. The revolver gleamed in Bates's hand, the muzzle fixed on Jace's chest. Time seemed to splinter, the roar of fire behind them. Clara's scream sharp as glass. Tommy's sobs muffled against her dress. Shadow, limping, sides scorched, stood trembling at their flank. "Tonight I finished the Callahan name," Bates hissed. His finger curled on the trigger. A single shout split the night. "Drop it, Bates!" From the ridge above, lanterns flared like a river of stars. Dozens of riders descended, the townsfolk, their faces grim and set, rifles in hand. At their head rode Sheriff Tom Avery, a weathered man of 58. His hair was iron gray, his frame lean from years on the saddle. A deep scar marked his cheek, testament to a life lived on the line between law and chaos. His voice carried with steady authority. "Guns down." Now Bates froze, revolver still raised. His eyes darted from Jace to the crowd pressing closer, recognition dawning that his grip on power had just been torn away. Sheriff Avery dismounted, boots crunching over scorched earth. He leveled his rifle. "We've had whispers for 20 years about the fire that burned old man Callahan out of the north pasture. Folks said it was accident, but evidence has surfaced, witnesses." "You?" Bates' gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara's heart hammered as she held Tommy closer. The sheriff's voice hardened. "You and your kin set that blaze. You stole from the Callahans and tried to finish what your father started. It ends tonight." Bates laughed hoarsely, though sweat streaked his temple. "You have no proof." But then a figure staggered forward, Mike Turner, beaten and ash-stained, his shotgun long discarded. His voice cracked as he spoke. "They do. I saw the lantern that night. I knew, and I stayed silent. Bates's father bribed me to keep quiet. His throat tightened. "I've carried that guilt every day since." Murmurs swept the crowd. The betrayal cut deeper now, not just of Jace, but of the town. Bates snarled, raising the revolver higher, desperation in his eyes. "Shut your mouth, Turner." And then it happened. Shadow, though his body trembled with exhaustion, surged forward. The Mustang planted himself directly in front of Clara and Tommy. his burned flank quivering, but his head high. His ears pinned back, hooves pawed the ground. A wall of flesh and spirit against the barrel aimed their way. The crowd held its breath. In that moment, Shadow was no mere horse. He was guardian, soldier, survivor. Bates hesitated, revolver wavering. The sheriff barked, "Stand down, Bates!" But Bates snarled and swung the gun toward Clara. "No!" Jace roared. He stepped forward, eyes blazing, heart hammering, and then Shadow lunged. His hooves struck the dirt, his scream tearing the night, and Bates faltered, just long enough. The sheriff's deputies seized him, wrenching the revolver from his hand. Bates fought, spitting, curses, but the crowd pressed close, forcing him down. Silence fell, broken only by Shadow's ragged breaths and the crackle of the dying barn. Jace lowered his revolver, the weight of years lifting off his shoulders. He turned, eyes meeting Clara's. Smoke smeared her face, tears streaked through soot, Tommy still clutching her tightly. For the first time in his life, Jace's voice trembled with truth. "I don't need a wife for the law," he said, raw and unguarded, "or for land. I need you. I need a family. I need you beside me, Clara." The crowd stood witness, silent, reverent. Clara's breath caught, her heart twisting with a rush of relief, grief, and something deeper than either. She stepped closer, her voice steady, though her eyes shone with tears. "And I need you, Jace. Not for survival. For us. For the life we can build together." The sheriff gave a curt nod to his men, who dragged Bates away in chains. The people began to disperse, murmuring of justice long delayed, but finally served. Yet Clara, Jace, Tommy, and Shadow stood in the glow of embers, bound together by something stronger than fire or fear. The barn collapsed behind them, sparks shooting skyward like prayers. The family turned as one. Clara reached for Jace's hand, their fingers intertwining. Tommy pressed between them. Shadow limped forward, singed but proud, his breath steaming in the cool night air. Together, they stepped from the ashes. Above them, the horizon bled into gold as dawn broke. Clara whispered almost to herself, "Not a bargain anymore. Not survival. Love." Jace's hand tightened in hers. "Yes, love." And as the first rays of morning crowned the smoldering land, they walked on, man, woman, child, and Mustang, toward a future not born of desperation, but of hope. In the ashes of broken barns and the shadows of old wounds, Jace and Clara discovered something greater than land, greater than survival. They found that even the harshest trials can give birth to trust, to courage, and to love. This story reminds us that family is not only the blood we're born into, but the bonds we choose, the hands we hold, and the hearts that refuse to let go. In every season of loss, there is still a chance to begin again, if we dare to believe in one another. If this tale touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss the next story of courage, hope, and love beneath the western sky.